Hi everyone, this is Mindy Eggen and welcome back to my channel. For today's card project, I have a window scene here where no measuring is required. Well, there's a little bit of measuring, but not when it comes to this window scene. The Master Layouts 9 set from Gina K Designs has this window die in it, which already has these window areas perfectly measured out, so you do not need to do any measuring for it. So to do this, I will be using the Gina K Designs Masking Magic and the Master Layouts 9 die set. There is that die up on top that has that window scene for us that we will be creating. Now I think I might create my card or use these a little differently than Gina might, but here is what I like to do. I trimmed those Masking Magic sheets right in half. I lined up that window die and I die cut it out of the Masking Magic. Now my main thing here is I just wanted to have a little bit of a border around that window frame. I like to personally have a panel to add on top of my card front. So I just want to make sure that my cardstock I'm going to be using is large enough to die cut out a panel from. And it'll all make sense once I get moving here. So this is a piece of layering weight cardstock from Gina K Designs, cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. It is amazing for ink blending. If you have never tried it, I highly, highly recommend it. So to place my mask down, I am just gently putting it onto my cardstock, starting from the center and working my way out. Now you might have to fidget with it just a little bit, but once it gets in place, then you can run your finger over it to really adhere down to the cardstock. What's really great about Masking Magic is once you press it down, it sticks great, but it does not rip your paper once you pull it off. So once that is in place, I am taking some 1-inch Post-it tape and running it along the edges. If you have some scraps of the Masking Magic, you could use that, or Post-it notes, whatever you would like, but I want to protect those very outer edges. I could have die cut out a full sheet from, or a full panel from the Masking Magic, but I try to save my Masking Magic as much as possible, and I didn't want to die cut out that full panel. So I am okay using the Post-it tape to protect those edges. Now I'm first starting off by ink blending in the center of this mask using sweet corn, and I have my inks set off on the side there in an ink stand. This is the rectangle shape that fits the Gina K Designs inks perfectly. Now I'm using the blender brushes from Gina K Designs, and I'm just going in a circular motion right in the center, working my way out just a little ways towards the outer edges of those squares or those rectangles that we have masked off. Then I'm going to come in from the outer edge and work my way in towards the center with Tranquil Teal. I'm going very, very light-handed here. You can see why I wanted to protect those very outer edges of that card panel. I want to make sure that those stayed white. So I'm going in towards the center, not really going into that sweet corn. I really didn't want to make a green. I want to have a light halo around there. Next, I'm going to come in the navy. I wanted to intensify those outer edges just a little bit. So just very, very light-handed, coming into those outer edges, still leaving it show the Tranquil Teal that is in there. Now, what I did here is I bumped my fingers up onto the head of the brush. I'm applying very light pressure, and by holding the head of the brush, I'm able to kind of control it a little bit more. I didn't want it going in all the way to the center, so by just holding the head, I have that control over the brush. So I use this color in the navy on the very top and on the very bottom, not so much on the side because there's really not a lot of room there. Now, once this is blended, I'm leaving everything in place. Be careful with touching the Post-it note tape because it'll leave ink on your fingers. And I didn't want to get ink on my white cardstock after I peel everything away. So just be careful of your ink you have on here. So I placed this in my Misty tool, and it's actually really nice because that Post-it tape is kind of holding this in place. And I'm bringing in some images from the Friendly Silhouettes stamp set. I thought it would be really cool to have that butterfly kind of stretched across the bottom two masked off areas. I keep wanting to call them squares, but they're not squares. They're kind of a rectangle shape. Now my other two images will be coming in from the top, and I haven't used this stamp set yet, it's pretty new for me right now. So I had to prep that by cleaning it with my tidy towel and also just rubbing my hand across it to kind of condition the stamp a little bit. And then I can ink this up with the Obsidian Amalgam ink. Now you may notice there is a black piece underneath the door of my Misty, and that is actually a foam insert from one of my other Misties. I have a few of them, and that I have on there as kind of a safeguard. I noticed when I'm inking up my images, I tend to be a little forceful, and I push down on the door of that Misty kind of hard sometimes. So I'm trying to just save on my hinges a little bit and prolong the life of my Misty by just putting that foam insert underneath the door, and that's catching a lot of the give that I'm applying to that stamped image. So it's just something that I've started doing recently. So I really wanted an intense black impression here, so I did ink up my images twice and stamp them down. And I'm just using my fingers to apply that pressure to the very intricate areas of the stamp. Now you want to give this a minute or so to dry because the Obsidian ink stays wet just a little bit longer than the regular dye ink. So just give that a minute to dry, and then I could start carefully peeling back that Post-it tape. Now I noticed that in the very top corner, I did have a little bit of an area that I missed masking off, but thankfully it's just up in the top corner, and I'm going to die cut that out anyway. Now to remove my masking magic, I actually used my tweezers to kind of help get it started, and then I'm just peeling this away, and everything is so perfect. There's no sticky residue left behind, and we have this gorgeous window scene. Now you could totally leave it like this. You could just add a sentiment or put it on a card base, but I really love using some of the other master layouts to die cut out my scene. A lot of times I will use master layouts too because it has a stitched border, but this time I am using master layouts 1. I needed to pick out a color for my card base, and I usually take my card swatches here. This is of all the Gina K Designs cardstock colors that I have labeled, and I just kind of fan them out and try and pair it up with what would look good with my background. Now, because I combined two blues and kind of made my own shade of blue, I decided to just skip the blues completely and use Whisper cardstock. Now, I haven't attached anything together yet. I decided I was going to use a sentiment from the beautiful Butterflies stamp set. The sentiment I'm going to use is called Lift You Up, and the flat edge of the stamp is at the bottom. So I am using my Misty corner and pushing that up from the bottom to help me align that straight on the front of my card. And this is also filling in kind of that open area that I had on the left-hand side of my scene. I'm also going to have the sentiment kind of hanging off just a little bit. To match the intensity of the black with the rest of my scene, I am stamping the sentiment twice in the Obsidian ink. Another thing I like to do to my cards is layer them up for dimension. Now you can use foam tape or foam squares for this, but I like to use full pieces of cardstock. It can be any type of maybe cheap cardstock you have or scraps that you have. I layered together about 3 pieces of cardstock that is cut to the same size as my panel. So I think this one is about 3 3/4 by 5 inches, and I just used a dot runner to attach those. Now, the reason I like to use the cardstock is because it provides even coverage over that entire panel. I won't have any kind of saggy areas. So I put my card front, which is the Whisper cardstock, cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I placed that in my Misty. I added dot runner to the back of my panel, and then I could attach it, and just putting it in the Misty helps make sure that I have even margins around the entire edge of my card. Now, I was trying to think what I could do to step this up a little bit. I mean, it's a beautiful scene. I love how everything came out, but I really wanted to step it up a little bit. And I decided to go with my Jelly Roll pen. And I'm just adding little lines to create kind of highlights on the images. And I was so happy with how this turned out. Now, I don't know if it's artistically correct as far as where the highlights should go. I think just picking one side and adding that to it just really helped make these images pop. For most of the leaves, I was able to actually add a line, but for the flowers or the little berries, I just added little dots. The butterfly, I was kind of a little stumped on at first. I added the outlines or the highlight areas to the outside of the wings. And then I decided to come back in and add just little dots to the very edges. Everything else had a lot of highlights on it, so I wanted this to kind of match. I wanted it all to be kind of cohesive in design. And that is going to finish up my card. I didn't add any other embellishments. I was really happy with how this design came out. Now, as far as creating this window scene, you could totally do it on your own with washi tape or some skinny masking tape, but I personally do not like to measure, and Gina just took all that stress and work away for me. So I'm so happy with this new die set, and of course, this absolutely amazing stamp set, the Friendly Silhouettes, which is one of my new favorites. I will have all of my supplies listed down below in the video description and over on my blog as well. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you again soon.